Today, we turn our attention to the Colonial Revival sunroom, a fusion of historical grace and seasonal ease. To some, Colonial Revival conjures formality, symmetry, order, patriotic nostalgia. But when that structure is infused with the freedom and golden softness of summer, it transforms. It becomes not a monument to the past, but a conversation between heritage and horizon. This episode of Charette Theory is about more than aesthetics. It's about what it means to create a room that holds both legacy and light. We'll explore architectural structure, but also color, texture, ritual, those subtle forces that shape how a space makes us feel. Let the season in. And join us in shaping a space where history leans into sunlight, and summer lingers just a little longer. There are rooms we pass through, and then there are rooms we dwell in, spaces that invite us not merely to sit, but to pause, to breathe, to remember. The sunroom, by its very nature, is a space between spaces. It is neither fully interior nor entirely part of the outdoors. It is where walls become windows, where floors catch light like paper catching ink, and where the passage of time is marked by the shifting angle of the sun. In the quiet hum of summer, this room becomes something sacred, a place where shadows lengthen gently and the world outside is framed as a living still life. Originating in the late 1800s, the Colonial Revival movement sought to reinterpret early American architecture through the lens of craftsmanship, memory, and identity. It was less about replication than about resonance, taking the geometry, molding, and detailing of the Georgian, Federal, and Dutch colonial homes of the 18th century and bringing them forward with dignity and grace. When placed within a sunroom, the most generous and light-filled of domestic spaces, these historical lines soften, inviting not rigidity but reflection. From mullioned windows and beadboard ceilings to breezy linens and botanical prints, we'll explore how to craft a sunroom that carries the weight of tradition with the lightness of a summer breeze. A room not stuck in time, but alive in it. So open the windows. Architecture, at its core, is a form of memory. It holds the gestures of past centuries in its walls and ceilings, in the thickness of its thresholds, in the cadence of light through glass. The Colonial Revival sunroom, in particular, embodies this idea with quiet dignity. It doesn't shout its presence, it speaks softly, in proportion and in poise. Step into such a sunroom and the first thing you notice is the sense of order. Symmetry anchors the space, not just as a design preference but as a principle. Windows and doorways align purposefully, often in mirrored arrangements that evoke Georgian clarity and federal restraint. This repetition of forms, arched or rectangular, invites the eye to settle. There is calm in rhythm, serenity in balance. In a room that invites the outdoors in, symmetry becomes the internal echo of nature's own patterns. The windows, of course, are the heart. Paned in mullions or set in French frames, they transform the garden or yard beyond into a gallery of seasonal still lifes. In the morning, they collect cool, bluish light that dapples the floors. By afternoon, they radiate golden warmth that turns every surface into something glowing and familiar. These windows are not simply for viewing, they're for living with, hour by hour. Some may be double-hung with divided lights, others tall and narrow in the federal style. All are designed to pull nature inward and let architecture breathe. Doorways carry echoes of a more ceremonial age. You might see sidelights flanking an exterior door, or gentle fanlights curving overhead. In some spaces, simple pilasters or engaged columns frame a threshold, not to impose formality but to lend structure, to remind us that even informal moments benefit from a sense of grace. The materials, too, whisper of history. Hardwood floors, often oak, pine, or chestnut, run underfoot with warmth and tactility. Some are left bare, others painted in time-worn shades of white or grey, and all are softened with flat-woven rugs in subtle colonial patterns. These floors creak just slightly beneath your steps, reminding you that you are walking through a story written over time. Along the perimeter, crown molding and baseboards trace the outline of the room with quiet confidence. These aren't just decorative, they're connective tissue. The crown, reaching gently up to meet the ceiling, adds visual height and elegance. The baseboards, grounded and modest, root the room to the floor. Even the trim, window casings, door surrounds, the occasional chair rail, serves a poetic purpose, pulling history into every edge. Overhead, beadboard ceilings carry texture and intimacy. Painted in soft ivory, pale blue, or a muted sage, they glow in daylight and darken into shadows as the sun dips. In some homes, exposed beams add a touch of rustic integrity, never overpowering, just anchoring the air above in something tactile and authentic. But perhaps the most profound architectural quality of a Colonial Revival sunroom is its restraint. It doesn't overstate. It gestures. It holds space for conversation, between seasons, between the past and present, between what we build and what we remember. This is not simply a room that exists in space, it exists in time. And through its architecture, it teaches us to inhabit both more deeply. Color, in a Colonial Revival sunroom, is not just an aesthetic, it's a memory made visible. It's a conversation between restraint and warmth, between the elegance of history and the fleeting touch of summer air. Unlike more exuberant seasonal styles, the palette here doesn't shout summer, it breathes it, slowly and with grace. We begin with the foundation. The base tones in this space act as a canvas, grounding the room in warmth without overwhelming it. Think of shades that feel like sunlight softened by age: warm ivory with a creamy undertone, parchment white with a hint of yellowed linen, soft sand that evokes sun-bleached stone. These neutrals are never sterile or stark, they're luminous, catching the light in subtle shifts as the day passes. On the walls, they create a quiet backdrop against which all other elements can hum. Then come the accents, the historical hues that bridge the gap between colonial tradition and the sensibilities of summer. Faded colonial blue, like a well-loved shutter weathered by decades of sea breeze. Sage green, gently grayed and silvered, like the underside of a leaf in the morning light. Dusty rose, reminiscent of sun-faded fabric. Butter yellow, warm and mellow, like the memory of a mid-century kitchen on a golden afternoon. These colors are never pure, they are always softened by time. In a Colonial Revival sunroom, we seek tones that feel lived in, never lacquered or new. They might appear as a whisper of green in a painted chair rail, as a pale coral in the embroidery of a cushion, or as a gentle gray-blue in a bookshelf tucked beside the window. The beauty of this palette is its coherence. Each hue is linked by an undertone of earth or sun, never icy, never synthetic. When seen together, these colors do not compete, they converse. They tell the story of a room that has held many seasons, but now welcomes the brightness of summer with open arms. Pattern, too, plays a role, but sparingly. Consider floral motifs that look like they've been pressed in a diary, or wallpaper prints that feel like a watercolor washed in rain. Stripes, if used, should be fine and regular, like ticking on an antique cushion. Gingham in muted tones may appear on a windowsill pillow. Nothing too busy. Nothing that distracts from the light. You might paint trim in a soft blue-gray that mimics the morning sky, or select upholstery in a faded coral that feels kissed by sun. A sideboard might wear a coat of pale sage, the brush strokes still visible, the finish matte and tactile. These touches allow the room to feel assembled slowly, layered with care, not curated with precision. The key to the Colonial Revival summer palette lies in its humility. It doesn't mimic nature's brightness, it complements it. These colors don't compete with the view beyond the window, they cradle it, soften it, frame it. They let the light in and allow it to stay. So in choosing your colors, think not of trend or perfection. Think of time. Think of heritage bathed in sunshine, and of rooms that feel as though they've been waiting all year for this particular light. Furnishing a Colonial Revival sunroom is an invitation to blend dignity with ease, to weave together the structure of tradition with the softness of summer's gentlest hours. Each piece carries not just function, but feeling, a sense that it belongs, not because it matches, but because it contributes to the room's quiet harmony. Start with the anchor pieces. A sunroom in this style often revolves around a seating arrangement that encourages conversation and contemplation. A settee or love seat, perhaps slip-covered in ivory cotton or oatmeal-toned linen, introduces softness without ostentation. The slipcover itself, a charmingly utilitarian detail, nods to both summer's need for breathability and the Colonial Revival's affection for neatness. It whispers comfort, not extravagance. Balance the softness with form. Windsor chairs, spindle-backed, hand-shaped, and painted in a mellow hue, offer historic character and visual lightness. Their graceful lines bring symmetry and a sense of tradition, while still feeling breezy enough to belong beside an open window. You might place a low bench under a bank of windows, its wooden seat inviting the sun to warm it throughout the afternoon. A drop-leaf table, oval or rectangular, may sit between two chairs, a place for tea, a bowl of fruit, or a pair of reading glasses set gently aside. Texture matters as much as shape. Woven rattan and wicker bring an air of informality to the space, particularly in armchairs or side tables. These materials, popularized during the Colonial Revival's height in the early 20th century, carry echoes of both English conservatories and southern verandas. Choose light finishes, natural honey or weathered white, so they don't visually weigh down the room. Layer in throws made from gauzy cotton or hand-loomed linen, folded casually over the arm of a chair, ready to be pulled close during a cool breeze. Flooring should never feel cold or hard. If the room features wooden planks, chestnut, oak, or painted pine, a rug can soften the steps and define space. Flat-woven rugs in historical patterns or braided natural fibers like jute or seagrass introduce texture while keeping the room grounded. Antique kilims or faded durries can bring in subtle pattern without disrupting the serenity of the palette. Don't overfill the room. The sunroom breathes. It's as much about the space between the furniture as the pieces themselves. A single writing desk tucked in a corner, its surface catching morning light. A pie crust table with a potted fern. A glass front cabinet displaying old books, shells, and linen-bound journals. These are the quiet moments of the room, the places where personality resides without demanding attention. Above all, the furnishings should feel as though they've arrived over time. Nothing matched, nothing hurried. A room that grew into itself. Colonial Revival doesn't impose, it curates the familiar with reverence. The sunroom, when furnished in this way, becomes a bridge between past and present, between intention and ease. It is here that tradition sits down for a glass of lemonade. Where formality smiles in the sunlight. Where heritage is made human and summer, at once radiant and restful, makes itself at home. In the Colonial Revival sunroom, light is not just a feature, it is a philosophy. The room exists, in many ways, to honor it. Window treatments here must serve a delicate balance, allowing sunlight to spill in unrestrained, while also offering shelter, softness, and moments of quiet privacy. This is where material, motion, and tradition meet in gentle harmony. Begin with the simplest, most poetic gesture, sheer curtains. Made from linen or fine cotton, they move like breath, like memory. When the windows are open and the breeze stirs them, these fabrics animate the room with life. Their translucence blurs the hard edges of the outside world, turning harsh midday sun into a diffuse, golden mist. The curtains may be tied back with simple twill ribbons or left free to drift in the currents of summer air. The feeling is always unhurried. Layering becomes an art of moderation. For rooms facing strong sun, add woven blinds made of bamboo, matchstick, or grass cloth. These natural materials filter light without blocking it, casting delicate shadows that change with the hour. Their texture mirrors the materials of the garden, wood, reed, straw, and creates continuity between indoors and out. When lowered halfway, they offer privacy while still letting you glimpse the flutter of leaves or the glow of the sky. Cafe curtains are another beautiful nod to tradition. Hung at the lower half of the window, they create a sense of enclosure without shutting out the sun. In white cotton or soft ticking stripes, they feel both homey and historically appropriate, more like a smile than a shield. And for those who love structure, tailored valances can crown the windows with a subtle gesture of formality. Think box pleated in vintage chintz or scalloped in embroidered details that whisper of past generations without weighing down the air. The hardware matters, too. Choose rods and rings in antique brass, blackened iron, or painted wood, materials that echo the architectural detailing of a colonial revival interior. They shouldn't gleam too brightly, they should feel lived in, as if they've been there for decades, quietly holding up the light. Even the way these treatments are used should honor the rhythm of the day. In the morning, the room might be flooded with fresh light, curtains wide open and blinds rolled high. By mid-afternoon, the blinds come down a few inches, softening the glare and inviting a slower pace. At dusk, the curtains may be drawn fully, enclosing the space in its own amber cocoon. This choreography of light isn't decorative, it's deeply atmospheric. And let's not forget that sometimes, the best treatment is no treatment at all. A bank of bare windows looking out on a lush summer garden can feel like a painting come to life. If the view offers beauty, and privacy isn't a concern, let it be part of the room. The Colonial Revival style, while rooted in structure, leaves space for moments of grace like these, where the outside world becomes the decoration. Ultimately, window treatments in the summer sunroom are not there to obscure, but to frame. To filter, to honor, and to occasionally soften. They are like punctuation in a sentence made of sunlight, quiet pauses, gentle flourishes, and the occasional elegant full stop. Through them, the room breathes. Through them, the season shines. If sunlight is the soul of the Colonial Revival sunroom, then nature is its heartbeat. This space was always meant to be porous, a room that listens to the world outside, that welcomes it in, not just through open windows, but through texture, color, and the living language of plants. Here, greenery is not just decor, it is companionship. It is the sense that this room, though curated and crafted, is never cut off from the natural world. Begin with scale. Larger specimens, like Boston ferns, rubber plants, or lemon trees, anchor the room in life. Place them in pedestal planters made of cast iron, aged ceramic, or weathered wood, the kind that recall the urns of early American porches or conservatories. A lemon tree in a wide terracotta pot brings a Mediterranean lightness to the colonial gravity, a fragrant gesture that speaks of ripeness and renewal. Ferns spill over the rims of tall planters, their fronds catching the golden hour in waves of green lace. Position these plants near windows or in the corners where the light pools, let them reach toward the sun, as they would in a garden. Don't feel the need to arrange everything symmetrically. The life of a plant resists perfect alignment, and that's part of the beauty. Smaller potted herbs or blooms can grace the window sills, writing desks, and side tables. Rosemary in terracotta, lavender in painted crockery, or even a small ivy trailing from a shelf, all add to the quiet choreography of the room. Their scent, however faint, becomes part of the atmosphere, an invisible thread tying together light, memory, and breath. Seasonal arrangements are another gentle way to participate in summer. On a central table, place a glass vase filled with blue hydrangeas, white peonies, or wild garden roses, cut just that morning, or appearing as if they could have been. Their shape should be loose, natural, maybe even a little unruly. This is not a room of tight floral compositions, it's a room of softness and slow unfolding. Even a simple branch in a ceramic pitcher can be more expressive than a dozen curated stems. And when living plants aren't possible or practical, the botanical spirit can still be felt. Consider framed prints of vintage plant studies, engravings of medicinal herbs, orchard fruits, or native flora, hung in pairs or clusters. These pieces, drawn in quiet detail, evoke both scientific curiosity and domestic tenderness. They speak to an era when the natural world was something to be catalogued and cherished. Textiles offer another canvas for the botanical mood. A pillow embroidered with trailing vines or a curtain printed in faded laurel leaves adds a sense of continuity, connecting the soft furnishings to the green world outside. Look for fabrics in natural fibers, cotton, linen, or hemp, with motifs that are stylized, but not stiff. Think chintz with a slightly sun-bleached palette or ticking stripes overgrown with ivy. Wicker baskets can be filled with sprigs of eucalyptus or dried hydrangea, their faded colors deepening as summer advances. Even a single magnolia blossom in a shallow bowl can turn the ordinary into the sacred. Importantly, these plants and botanical touches are not background, they are presence. They change with the season, respond to care, and return our attention to the here and now. In a Colonial Revival sunroom, they act as the most eloquent bridge between the cultivated formality of the past and the wild generosity of nature. This is not nostalgia, it is intimacy with the living world, brought indoors in ways both elegant and effortless. In summer, the room doesn't just open to the outdoors, it lets it bloom within. In a room designed to celebrate light, illumination is never just functional, it is emotional. The Colonial Revival sunroom, drenched in summer's natural radiance by day, must evolve as the sun arcs across the sky. Morning light is crisp and dewy, by midday it is generous and golden, and by evening it softens into amber shadows that slip across the floorboards. Good lighting honors these transitions. It doesn't fight the sun, it partners with it, extending its magic into twilight and beyond. Begin with the natural rhythm of the day. In the earliest hours, the sunroom glows on its own. Curtains catch the light like sails, refracting it into gentle patterns across the furniture and floor. During the moments, the room doesn't need anything else, their illumination is almost sacred. Allow it to breathe in this early quiet. Let the beams of sun fall unfiltered onto a table or the spines of books. This is when the room feels closest to the outdoors, like a conservatory wrapped in stillness. As daylight grows stronger, shadows deepen and contrast sharpens. Here, lighting begins to prepare itself, not to compete with the sun, but to gently wait for its moment. Architectural lighting should remain subtle and period-appropriate. Ceiling fixtures, if used, might echo colonial gas lamps, glass bell shades, oil-rubbed bronze, or aged brass. Their silhouettes are familiar, evoking candlelit parlors and lantern-lit corridors, yet they feel perfectly at home amidst wicker and linen. Wall sconces, particularly those flanking windows, mirrors, or art, can offer a symmetrical grace. Choose styles that mimic traditional carriage lamps or early electrified fixtures. Aged finishes, curved arms, or candle-style bulbs maintain the illusion of heritage, while still offering warm, practical glow. Their light should be soft, never sterile. Use dimmers whenever possible. Light in this space must always feel atmospheric, never insistent. But perhaps the most intimate light comes from lamps. Table lamps with ceramic or glass bases and linen or parchment shades are ideal. Their presence is quiet, domestic, and deeply comforting. Imagine a lamp placed beside a rocking chair, its pool of light drawing your hands toward a book or teacup as evening settles in. Another on a corner table might softly illuminate a fern, casting a leafy silhouette onto the wall behind it. Choose shades in off-white, sand, or parchment, colors that glow warmly as the sky darkens. As the day slips into evening, candlelight becomes the room's heartbeat. Brass candlesticks with beeswax tapers line a windowsill or the edge of a mantel. A pair of hurricane lamps flicker on a sideboard. Their flames don't try to compete with modern light, they bring back something else, the timeless rhythm of nightfall, the romance of shadows, the way light used to feel when it came in smaller, more precious doses. Even the humble lantern, a motif with deep roots in colonial America, can make an appearance. Whether electrified or candlelit, a lantern hung by the door or placed on a windowsill glows with the warm invitation of homecoming. It reminds us that this room is not just a pretty space, it's a retreat, a threshold between the predictable patterns of domesticity and the wild, dreaming pulse of nature. Avoid modern overheads or overly recessed lighting. Fluorescent bulbs, cool-tone LEDs, or anything that glares will strip the room of its spell. Instead, use warm-temperature bulbs that mimic candlelight, 2700 K or lower, to preserve the softness of the space. Lighting, when done right in a Colonial Revival sunroom, never announces itself. It hovers. It grazes. It casts shadows that remind you how fleeting and beautiful the hours of the day really are. From the first sunbeam to the last flicker of candlelight, illumination in this room becomes a choreography of presence and absence, a way of seeing not just the space, but the season, with new reverence. There is a quiet elegance in the way summer touches a Colonial Revival sunroom, not with ostentation or clutter, but with a light, knowing hand. Seasonal styling here isn't about overhauling the space with each passing month. Rather, it's about accentuating the atmosphere that already exists, allowing subtle gestures and curated details to echo the world just beyond the window panes. These accents are not decorations for decoration's sake, they are vessels for mood, memory, and the passing of time. Begin with texture. The summer sunroom doesn't need loud visual statements, but it thrives on tactile richness. A woven basket resting beside a spindle-legged chair might hold a tangle of linen throws, light enough to drape across your shoulders during a breezy evening, heavy enough to add visual grounding to the room. The basket itself might be vintage, its fibers sun-bleached and fraying at the edges, offering a quiet nod to use and age. Layer surfaces with thoughtful ease. On the tea table, a simple wooden tray might hold a ceramic pitcher filled with wildflowers, Queen Anne's lace, rudbeckia, or bluebells picked from the garden or farmer's market. Alongside it, a stack of pressed flower books or a well-thumbed summer novel brings a literary intimacy. These objects don't need to match. In fact, it's better when they don't. A sunroom's soul is found in the conversation between old and new, between polished and weathered. Artwork, too, can echo the season without directly depicting it. A delicate watercolor of a shoreline, its horizon blurred and dreamy, leans against a beadboard wall. A framed botanical etching, a study in ink of ferns or foxgloves, reminds you of the natural world beyond the room, while still living fully within it. Antique silhouettes, pastoral prints, or small oil landscapes in carved wood or black lacquer frames continue the Colonial Revival lineage while allowing space for seasonal reinterpretation. Every item in this room should invite interaction. A straw hat hung from a wrought iron hook by the door is more than an accessory, it's a prompt. A vintage fan perched on a side table isn't just a nostalgic object, it might actually stir the air on a still afternoon. A stack of linen napkins in a carved bowl suggests impromptu refreshments, lemonade served in etched glasses, perhaps paired with shortbread cookies on transferware plates. Even scent becomes part of the styling here. A bowl of lemons, sun-warmed and glinting with essential oils, fills the air with brightness. A lavender sachet tucked into a drawer releases its calming perfume whenever the drawer opens. A beeswax candle, even unlit, offers a subtle, honeyed note. These are invisible luxuries, ambient touches that deepen the sensory world of the room. Plants, too, are accents. A sprig of mint in a bud vase. A single stem of hydrangea placed with ceremony on a writing desk. Nature doesn't always need to overwhelm the space, it can punctuate it, like commas in a sentence, reminding us of life outside without insisting on it. What you leave out is just as important as what you include. A Colonial Revival sunroom in summer is never over-furnished, never over-styled. Instead of layering more and more, consider the elegance of restraint. Allow negative space to frame your favorite pieces. Let a single object, a candlestick, a glass paperweight, a ceramic bowl, command a whole tabletop. Each item is a chapter, not a footnote. Above all, the goal is to create a rhythm, a harmony between structure and softness, between the past and the present, between the architecture of the house and the wildness of the season. This is not a space to impress, but a space to inhabit, to live in, to remember. The styling should feel like an extension of your own inner pace during the summer months, slow, deliberate, quietly joyful. Because in the end, seasonal decor in a Colonial Revival sunroom isn't really about summer at all. It's about capturing the essence of summer, its ease, its golden light, its breezy pause between one moment and the next, and weaving that essence, stitch by stitch, into the very fabric of the room. In every thoughtfully designed room, there lies an invitation, not just to admire, but to inhabit. And in the Colonial Revival sunroom, that invitation arrives softly, like the golden hush of early morning light across old pine floors. This is not a room meant to be admired from afar, frozen in place like a photograph. It is a living space, meant to gather the rhythms of daily life into its quiet corners. And it is the rituals, the small, repeated acts, that bring it fully to life. Begin with the morning. Before the world stirs, the sunroom hums with potential. You might rise early and make your way to a wicker chair position to catch the first light. Here, on a small pedestal table, a carafe of water and a notebook await. Morning journaling becomes not just a practice, but a daily meditation. The quality of light, the scent of the garden, the creak of the house as it wakes, all these things become companions to thought. There's something deeply grounding about beginning your day in a room that honors both the past and the present. Later in the day, the sunroom may become a retreat from the summer's intensity. A tea service laid out near a breezy window, blue and white porcelain, a linen runner, a sprig of mint in the pot, transforms an ordinary afternoon into a small ceremony. The act of preparing tea here feels like a return to something slower, older, more intentional. In a world that asks for speed, the sunroom answers with pause. Reading takes on a different quality in this space. A high-backed Windsor chair, pulled up beside a side table stacked with novels and essays, becomes a sanctum. The sun filters through sheer linen curtains, dappling the pages. There is no need to rush. Time stretches differently in rooms like these. You may find yourself reading the same paragraph twice, not out of distraction, but because the moment is so full of stillness, of scent, of subtle breeze, that you want to linger inside it. Children might come in barefoot from the garden, trailing laughter and dandelions. A quilt on the floor becomes a picnic site or a quiet place to nap. The sunroom adapts, not rigid, but receptive. A piano in the corner, its keys warmed by the afternoon light, might host a quiet interlude of music, filling the room with echoes of another time. In the evening, the room shifts again. You might light a few candles, brass candlesticks on the mantel, hurricane lamps on the windowsill. Their glow flickers against the old wainscoting, casting moving shadows. Here, a letter might be written at a small secretary desk, with fountain pen and wax seal. Or perhaps a quiet conversation unfolds, one that couldn't happen anywhere else, because only this room has the right silence for it. And even when no one is using it, the room holds presence. A shawl draped over the back of a chair, a book left open, a flower dropped from its stem, all these signs of life become part of the decor. The sunroom becomes not just a space in the home, but a reflection of the people who pass through it. It wears their moods, their thoughts, their quiet moments like a garment. These rituals don't require effort or formality. In fact, they thrive on simplicity. What makes them powerful is their repetition, the way they mark time not in hours and minutes, but in rhythms and returns. They create continuity between the room's architecture and your own inner architecture, between the room's heritage and your modern, lived experience. The Colonial Revival sunroom becomes a chamber of seasonal mindfulness. It is a place where light filters through memory, and daily life unfolds with quiet grace. And in summer, when the days are long and the pace is loose, it becomes more than a room. It becomes a sanctuary of soulfulness. A room not just between indoors and outdoors, but between the world as it is, and the world as we wish it to be. As we close the door softly on this Colonial Revival sunroom, we're left not with grand statements, but with lingering impressions. A rustle of curtains in the summer breeze. The creak of an old wooden floor as the light changes angle. The feeling of a space that knows how to hold stillness, how to absorb time without rushing it along. The Colonial Revival style, with all its symmetry, tradition, and historical poise, could easily lean toward formality. And yet, in the context of a summer sunroom, it transforms. It becomes something softer, something that breathes. The high-backed chairs, the molding and mullioned windows, the antique brass accents, they don't speak in stiff tones here. Instead, they whisper of legacy, of things made carefully and kept with love. They anchor the room, yes, but they don't weigh it down. And when summer enters that architecture, through sunlight, through air, through the scent of gardenia and the hum of bees just beyond the screen door, it softens everything. It blurs the formality, adds a glaze of warmth. Tradition doesn't vanish, it evolves. And what emerges is a space that feels both timeless and immediate. This sunroom, at its best, is a threshold, not only between the house and the garden, but between eras. It is where the sensibilities of another time meet the needs of now. It honors craftsmanship and quiet dignity, But it also makes room for ease, for barefoot afternoons, for laughter drifting in from the porch. It reminds us that heritage isn't a fixed thing, it's a living thing. One we touch every day when we choose how we dwell. And so, if you've ever looked at Colonial Revival interiors and thought them too stiff, too serious for your daily life, let this room be a gentle rebuttal. Let it show you how symmetry can be comforting, how historical details can frame the everyday without overpowering it. Let it invite you to imagine your own version, a room where the past isn't a relic but a rhythm. You don't need a historic house to create that feeling. It can begin with something small, a scallop valance in a sun-washed cotton, a pair of spindle chairs you found at a flea market, a vintage etching framed above the wainscoting. It might begin with a habit, the way you pour tea in the afternoon, or light a candle as the sun sets. Because ultimately, a sunroom like this is built not just of materials, but of moments. The design gives you the bones, yes. But it's your rituals, your rhythm, your presence that bring it to life. That's the essence of what we explore on Charette Theory, not just how to decorate a room, but how to live meaningfully within it. So as summer unfolds outside your windows, take a moment to look inward. How does your space hold the season? How does it honor where you've been, and where you're going? Thank you for joining us in this quiet study of light, legacy, and seasonal grace. If this video has inspired your own Colonial Revival moments or sparked ideas for your summer interiors, we'd love to hear about them in the comments below. Share your stories, your sunlit corners, your favorite rituals. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to Charette Theory for more explorations of beauty, design, and the poetry of place. Until next time, may your rooms be restful, your windows wide, and your seasons full of light.